Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the True Dollar web series. This year, Texas Trust will be presenting a monthly webinar on Facebook Live every second Tuesday of the month to help our community and members manage their finances better during the tough times we are living in. My name is Washima Huck. I am a business and community engagement partner for Texas Trust, representing Arlington and Mansfield, and I will be your moderator today. You're welcome to engage with us by leaving comments or questions during the live session. We will be sure to answer as many questions in the allotted time or get back to you individually. You may be a first-time homebuyer or seller, or you may be someone looking to take out a loan or do a home refinance, but you may not know where to begin, especially in the trying times we're living in because of COVID. In this hour, we hope to present you with a few solutions and help make understanding mortgage a little bit simpler. But first, we at Texas Trust would like to highlight some resources accessible to our communities. So every month, we will be highlighting a nonprofit organization located in one of our Texas Trust towns. March's spotlight nonprofit organization is Balance. I would like to invite Linda Davis. I'm going to butcher your last name, Linda, because you just told me how to pronounce it. Do you want to help me out?
Demas.
Demas, there you go. I was going to pronounce it phonetically, but Linda Davis Demas. And I will ask her to share how they are an incredible resource for our community. Linda will stay on until the end to take any questions our viewers may have for her. Over to you, Linda.
Great, thank you, Ashima, and thank you to the Texas Trust Credit Union for having us. So as you mentioned, we are a nonprofit partner. We just celebrated 50 years of being a financial and housing counseling agency, one of the lead agencies in coaching and counseling in the country. So what we do is we essentially have on our team a group of coaches that focus on the budgeting aspect of really helping people understand how to manage their finances. And then we also have a housing counseling team, which is what I manage. And our counselors are all HUD certified. They also have specializations in areas such as pre-purchase. So if you're looking to buy a home and navigate that process in terms of understanding mortgages and so forth. Post-purchase, so as you mentioned, folks that are looking to refinance or maybe looking to do some upgrades to their home. I think with COVID, we're in these four walls, and so everybody is looking to see how they can improve those four walls essentially. And then we also work with folks that are renters and that are looking to potentially, move up and buy a home in the future and maybe, a longer term, 2 years or something to that nature, just help them understand that process, as well as folks that are struggling with their mortgages, so foreclosure prevention. And then for seniors specifically, we have HECM certified counselors that can help folks navigate the reverse mortgage and home equity conversion mortgage process. So our counselors typically work remotely, so that means that essentially we can counsel you and provide assistance from the comfort of your home. As long as you have a phone, we can really go over all of the information, get some basic intake from you, and really dig deep into, what it is you're hoping to achieve, what your goals are, and then talk about, how that really aligns with financials. So on the pre-purchase side, for example, the counselors will walk you through a lot of what Scott's going to present on as well, helping you understand the mortgage process, the different mortgage products, really demystifying some of, how that process works, especially as it pertains to, comparing different types of products. And we'll really look at affordability. That's going to be key for us, understanding, the differences between renting versus owning. There's a significant difference of today if something gets damaged, you pick up your phone and call your landlord. But when you're a homeowner, that expense is on you, right? So unless you have a home warranty program. So that's something that we want to make sure that our clients are aware of. And then we talk about things like, their down payment assistance programs. So we're fortunate that in Texas, for example, we have several down payment assistance programs. I know you mentioned that you cover Mansfield. So, Grand Prairie has some, Arlington has a program as well, Fort Worth, Tarrant County, Dallas, Irving, Plano. So there's quite a few out there, which is very fortunate for us and for the clients that we're working with. And then I think the other part is we'll talk a little bit about the inspection process. I tend to use an analogy that you wouldn't typically buy a pair of shoes without trying them on. You really shouldn't buy a house without having it inspected, right? And the women in the group always understand this. The guys kind of look at me like I'm a little, what do you mean by that? And it's really about making sure you understand, right? The structure of the home, is it sound? And, are there any things that you should be aware of as you enter into this potential purchase, which is really one of the biggest purchases that you'll ever have. And then we'll talk about the closing process in general. One of I think the beauties of the counselor is that we're really a neutral third party. And so our counselors will also be able to, if you choose to, really walk through the closing process and even review the closing documents with you before you go to closing. And so that way you have no surprises. You understand everything. And again, for us, we're a neutral third party. So it's about making sure that you have the information. Knowledge is power, right? So it's really about understanding that process. So, I would encourage anyone that's interested in looking either from the pre-purchase side to post-purchase looking to refi, or if you're struggling with your mortgage, or if you're a senior and you're considering a reverse mortgage, to definitely reach out to us. You can go to Balance. It's www.balancepro.org. That's our website. And you can also contact us at 1-800-777-7526. Like I said, our counselors are available Monday through, we have a limited team on Saturdays, but essentially Monday through Friday. And we do it basically over the phone with you. So it's a pretty convenient process. We try to meet the client where they're at in terms of just understanding this process and making sure they feel as comfortable as possible with this decision.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm sure after the storm and the damages that people had, and also, the remodeling people are doing, and with summer being such a hot time for people to move, you're going to be a great resource for our community. We will be sharing your contact information in the comments and pinning that. So if anyone is interested in contacting you, that information will be made available to them. Thank you, Linda. Yeah, for sure. And now a little bit about Texas Trust. So our mission is to build brighter financial futures, and we have been helping people live brighter since 1936. We are a not-for-profit company. That means we invest our profit back into the credit union to help our members and communities by offering higher savings rates, lower loan rates, and through community engagement. So now I am very excited to introduce our presenter for today, Mr. Scott Meigs, who is our Mortgage and Business Service Sales Manager. So I am really excited to have him on. He's a great presenter. He's paying me for all of these compliments, by the way. But,
you better stop now or you're going to break the bank.
So Scott has, he works with our commercial members. He manages Texas Trust mortgage and loan officers, and he has been in the financial industry since 1993. And he's been in the credit union space since 2007. Scott, I will turn it over to you now.
All by the age of 15, I might add.
Yes, that's by the age of 15.
Thank you, Ashima. I appreciate the introduction, and hopefully I didn't count the compliments, but hopefully I'm not too indebted. But thank you very, very much. It's my privilege to be here today and to share some ideas with you. I don't know where you're at in your journey. You may be just starting out. You may be along the process a ways. It's a very exciting time. I know that most of you know this. It's probably the largest purchase that any of us make in our lifetime. And it's quite a commitment. This is going to be home. Memories are going to be built here, lives established, children raised, pets, raised. And it's an exciting thing. And there's no place like home. I mean, all of us have gone on vacation, and we were excited to take that trip to some extravagant or not so extravagant place. And we're looking forward to it. But then, you're probably a lot like me. When you come back from vacation, you walk in your door, into your home. It's so nice to be back home. Nothing can replace home. And so we want to share some ideas today, no matter where you're at in your journey. Whether you're thinking about selling and buying somewhere else, whether you're going to be relocating due to career, whether this is your first time. I had the privilege of speaking with a lady within the last couple of weeks that drove from Dallas to see me, and she's never had a mortgage. She's rented her whole life. She's a divorced mom, and she didn't know anything about it. So we sat down and spent some time together, and I went over various programs. And by the time we were done, she was feeling really positive about being a homeowner, and I was excited for her. This was going to be her first time. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I don't know that I'm going to say anything that you've absolutely never heard before. I hope to remind you of some things possibly you've heard before, and to maybe trigger some thoughts, and maybe give you a perspective or an angle that you may not have considered. All right, so when we talk about mortgage, the point of this seminar today is to give you tools and knowledge to help you understand what your options are and what the process is. Some things that we'll talk about today are going to be, what do you do to determine your price range? What about selecting an area? That's important. Where are you going to live? Where are you going to buy? Evaluating the type of home that you're going to buy. Obviously, you need to find a home that's going to fit your needs. Choosing the right real estate agent. A real estate agent can really make this process very comfortable, or it can be a frustrating endeavor. Same with your mortgage loan officers. We're going to talk about the mortgage process, the basics of selling your existing home, and we'll finish up with talking about some other types of loans that might be available to you other than what just Texas Trust offers. We believe in educating the people that we work with, whether we have the program or not. We do our best to inform the folks we work with so that they can make a fair and balanced decision. All right. So with that in mind, let's talk first about determining your price range. Well, Shima, it doesn't look like I have control of the presentation. Can you click for me? There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about first determining your price range. Okay, obviously, this is really important because I have talked to folks that didn't take the time to do this in advance. It's really important from a budgeting perspective to know what your price range is, as well as to keep at bay the impulse to buy something you maybe can't afford. All right. We have all walked into a home at some time or another and have been wowed and amazed at this palatial place. And we can envision ourselves with our feet kicked up, enjoying a meal in front of this, wonderful fireplace, whatever the setting might be, or jumping into this luxurious pool. But, can we afford that? And, maybe we can, but we don't know unless we do the math and determine and do some budgeting to determine whether we can or not. I will tell you that the new on anything wears off after a little while. And if you don't have money for the unexpected things, and you don't have money to take vacation or to go out to dinner once in a while, and you end up being what we call house poor. Yes, you're making the payment, but just barely, but you can't do anything else. That's not any good either. So finding a home that fits within your budget is extremely important. One of the first things you want to do is to find an online budget tool that will help you determine, pricing tool that will help you determine, what you can afford. So, and there are plenty of them out there, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but it'll help you to determine how much of a down payment you're going to need, what to plan for taxes, for if you need private mortgage insurance, all of those things, and all of those affect your payment at the end of the day, right? The other thing is that we want to consider is, there's always a down payment. All right. With most all programs, there is a few programs out there that do 100% financing, but 100% financing doesn't mean they cover your closing costs necessarily. There's usually always money out of pocket. So in general, if you want a payment that's not quite as high and you want to avoid the mortgage insurance, you got to put at least 20% down. So that means you're financing 80%. But, before you do this, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of your credit history, that what you have in reserves, money in savings and retirement accounts. All of that needs to be evaluated. Now, you don't have to know it to the level of intense formulas, but have some idea where you land so that when you start messing around with mortgage calculators, you've got a general idea where you're at and what you can afford. All right. The other thing that you need to have, if you're going to have a down payment, since I'm talking about that right now, you need to make sure it's seasoned. All right. If someone may gift you, there are programs that allow gifting where a family member can gift you some money for your down payment. And there are other programs that don't allow that. But the money needs to be seasoned, which simply means it needs to be sitting in a bank account for at least a couple of months, so that it shows on 2 months bank statements. Okay, that way there's a trail for where the money's coming from. And you may say, well, why is that even important? What does that matter? And the reason is because a lender wants to make sure you didn't borrow your down payment. Because when we're figuring what your debt to income ratios are, you need to fall normally at 45% or less. That is, all of your debts cumulatively don't need to be more than 45% of your gross income. If you've made this other loan to a family member or someone else, and you haven't disclosed it, haven't told us about it, but you have this monthly payment, that definitely affects your affordability. Okay, so just keep that in mind, and it'll get you down the road quite a ways for sure. So let's see here. Do I have control? I guess you're saying yes. You see it change. It didn't change on my end. There we go. It's not working for me, Washima, so I guess you're going to have to change it for me. I don't know what it's doing. All right, so let's talk about some steps to take when we talk about, determining your price range. First thing that we want to do is we want to create a budget. Okay, really important. So when you want to determine your budget, you're going to be determining the maximum price that you're going to pay for a home. It's so easy, if you don't do this, to be swayed by the house. There's some beautiful properties out there, and there may be some options in some homes you visit that you feel like you can't live without, but you need to go in knowing what your affordability factor is. You need to create a budget before you start shopping, and then determine that you're going to have the discipline to stick within your budget. All right. All right, the second thing that you need to do is determine what your search range brackets are. Once you have your budget, you now are going to begin looking for a property. So when you go online and you start searching for properties, or you're going to work with a realtor and ask for listings, you've got to determine what the search range brackets are, and you're going to flex them just a little bit. Now, let me qualify that. I'm not asking you to flex your budget. Your budget is fixed. I'm talking about flexing your search brackets a little bit. And the reason that's important is because, you know, if a house, they're often grouped together pricing wise, and you get these thresholds, right? Because we know that looking at a house that costs $249,999 looks much better than a house that's selling for $250,000. There may be only a dollar difference, but it's a psychological threshold, okay? So you want to flex a little bit. If your, let's say, if your range is $250,000 is the max, you may want to search all the way up to 255 or 260, because you never know that you may find a motivated seller and they may take 250. All right, so just stretch it a little bit. It's probably not realistic though, particularly in this current market, for you to stretch it very much. We are in a seller's market. There's a shortage of inventory. Now's not the time to think that you're probably going to be able to offer $25,000 or $30,000 less and a homeowner is going to take it. We're not in that market right now. All right. So, so flex those brackets just a little bit. The next thing you want to do is compare the history of the list sales price to determine trends in the area that you're looking. So, you know, look at, you know, what houses in the area you want to buy as you're doing your search range. So you've got price, you've got zip code, you determined what area. You're going to determine whether you're going to have a 3-bedroom house, a 2-bedroom house, 3 bathrooms, what square footage, all of those are the search parameters. But when you determine that, begin to look at what is the history of homes selling in the area that you're looking at, particularly in your price range. You know, are they selling quickly? You know, are they staying 30 days on the market, 60 days on the market, 1 week, 2 weeks? Because that's going to help you determine how quickly these homes are moving in that particular area. If you're seeing a relative short period of time that these houses go on the market and then they're sold, you're not going to want to drag your feet on something. If you find something you like, you're going to want to put an offer, and you're going to probably want to put an aggressive offer in. Okay. In addition to that, that helps you determine what the seller's motivation is. One thing you can be sure of, if you as a buyer are doing this kind of research, so is the seller. The seller is figuring out, and they're probably working with an agent who knows the market, and they're going to want to get every dime they can get for their house. They're also going to know whether they're in a seller's market or a buyer's market, how well the homes are moving in their area. So you want to figure out what the seller motivation is. All right. And then, you know, you can also, by looking at these dates and turnaround times, determine what the market temperature is. That's really what I'm talking about, by looking at days on the market and that kind of thing. It's very important, okay? Because your offer, you know, if you're looking at a property, it's kind of boils down to this. You're looking at a property that's been on the market for 60 days, 60 plus days, approaching 90 days or whatever. You know, I would say that the seller is probably a little more motivated to work with somebody to sell that house. That, or they may be overpriced. All right, so that's going to tell you a little bit. But again, if you're in an area where the houses are turning and burning, meaning going very fast, you better make your first offer a serious offer, okay? During this time, you want to make sure that you maintain a good credit score, a good credit history, a good employment history. Now is not the time when you're shopping for a house to be changing your job, to be buying that car, to be charging something on a credit card. You need to let all that go during this phase and just maintain making your payments on time, fix any issues on your credit. If there's collections on, you know, take care of those issues so that that's not going to mess you up during this process. You know, if you're thinking you're going to change jobs, don't you do it before you buy the house. Okay, we need 2 years steady work history. So if you change jobs recently, that could create a real problem and issue for you. All right. So next screen, Washima. Thank you. So let's talk about, you know, where you buy. Where you live matters. I can think of some areas that I would not want to live for a bunch of reasons. And I can think of a bunch of areas I would love to live for a bunch of other reasons. So my wife and I have moved cross country twice. And we learned something. Now, many of you are not going to be facing this. You're just going to be buying a house, maybe even in the same neighborhood. Maybe you're changing a zip code, but it might be an adjacent zip code. It may be within the DFW footprint, the Metroplex footprint. So it's not a huge move, all right? So what I'm saying, what I'm getting ready to say would apply more if you're talking about a major geographical move. You're moving from Texas to Missouri, or Missouri to Texas, or some, my wife and I have done that twice. We moved from Florida to Michigan, then Michigan to Texas. And you know what I wish we would have done? We bought. We searched the areas and then we bought. We didn't rent. But I wish we would have rented for a year each time we did that. And the reason for that is because we didn't know what we didn't know. And when you move into a new area, you can look at towns, you can look at all the data, and that's certainly important when you look at school districts and that kind of thing. But because we didn't know the area, you know, we just kind of throw a dart at the map. Oh, there's a house we like, sure, we'll buy it. And in both situations, we wish we would have waited to have learned the area better before we bought, because we would have chosen different locations. All right, most of it was a convenience factor. It's one of it was a traffic issue. We just wish we would have learned the area a little bit better. So it speaks to this though. When you go to buy, you want to do some research and you want to know the area that you're going to be purchasing in. Okay, is it convenient to interstate access? You know, do you travel a lot? You know, is that important? Are the roads all around you toll roads, or is it free thoroughfare? Is there major congestion issues? What are the school districts like? Are the school districts highly ranked? Do they have programs for your children locally? What about nonprofits in the area? Is there good support, community support in the area? Is there a community center that's active in the area? If you're a retiree, are there retirement centers and things for retirees to do? If you're a young person, you know, are there activities and things that would attract a young person? There's all kinds of things to consider. Are you a traditional person? Do you want a traditional neighborhood? Are you a contemporary person? Do you want something cutting edge and kind of raw with design, and you like the uptown, so you're interested in lights and glitter, and you want to walk down the street from your house and go eat at a diner or a restaurant or a bar or whatever it is, whatever your scene is. All of those play into how you want to live. So where you live absolutely matters. So let's talk about a few additional things that I haven't mentioned. Next screen, please. So safety is really important. I mean, if you think about it, you know, what good is it to live in an area if you're constantly worried about your safety? I don't know that I would want to live like that. And while there's no guarantees anywhere you go, certainly crime rates vary from one place to another. So you want to look at what kind of crime records, what kind of you know, problems do they have with break-ins and that kind of thing? What kind of criminal activity? You want to search for, do a search if you have children on sexual predators. Make sure there's not any sexual predators in the area when you're purchasing. You want to know what kind of police force they have. You know, is the police active, or is it just, you know, one or two cruisers, you know, and that's it, that's the police force, you know, or how active is it? How good are they with interacting with community? Proximity to stores and businesses, I mentioned that, community amenities, you know, and what are the plans for the future? You know, is the Chamber of Commerce active? You know, you can go to the Economic Development Center in your local area, find out what are the plans. What are they planning in the future? All the way from roads to schools to community centers, to big business that may be coming into an area that would have a big impact on your area. So all those are all things that you know, parks. You know, if you're a park person, you know, are there some good local parks? Or I'll never forget, there was a place we visited. It was just a little sleepy pass through town, but we stopped to get out of the car and stretch our legs, and we went to this park, and it was the park, everything in the park was made out of wood. And it was cool because it looked like a castle and it was really neat. The problem was you didn't want to touch any of it. And the reason you didn't want to touch any of it was because it was so aged that you would literally pick up a handful of splinters if you ran your hand down any of the railings or touched any of the wood. It was just in very poor shape. You know, that would be important to know, you know. So check out the parks and that kind of thing. The streets, you know, drive the roads. Are they keeping up with that? All right, very good. So next screen, please. Okay, let's talk about finding the right home, all right? So when you look at finding a new home, and I'm sure, you know, you see this picture here in front of us, and by the way, that's not a house, that's just the pool house, right? This is gonna be your place, right? You're gonna have a huge mansion and you're gonna have a pool house in it. Okay, maybe not, all right? But isn't that attractive? And that's why you need to have a budget. Because if you're anything like me, I'd walk onto a property like this and be oohed and ah and go, okay. I'd be looking at my wife going, I want this. Like, can we get this? You know, this is great. And, you know, she would have to, of course, tug on my shirt tail and bring me back to reality. But, you know, it can be very overwhelming when you're talking about shopping for a new home, particularly if you've never done it before. And even if you have, I mean, it's a little scary. You know, we're committing to such a large amount of money over a long period of time. And, you know, if you're buying a home that has been pre-owned and it's not brand new, you don't know what issues you may be inheriting with the house. You know, so a good home inspection is important, but you just don't know, even with a home inspection. My wife and I purchased one house, paid for a home inspection. I always recommend that you do that. We did it, and he still missed a major repair that was about $25,000 in the septic system. And he just missed it. You know, you just don't know, you know, when you're buying a home. And you could think, well, if I buy a new home, I don't have to worry about that. Well, not necessarily. You know, it can be very overwhelming. Sometimes builders cut corners. You know, is this a reputable builder? Or are there problems? Have people had, what are the reviews saying about this builder? How long has he been doing it? You know, what kind of warranty program do they offer? And then look at reviews on how well they honor that warranty program. Because you may find that, oh, we have a really great looking warranty, but it takes you 2 years on a waiting list to get your warranty issues done. That's no good either, right? So all these factors can make it very, very overwhelming. So one of the things you want to do with finding the right home is you need to determine what size house are you going to buy, okay? You know, houses have grown every generation or so. It seems like the house size almost doubles. You know, the average house size, that is. You know, houses nowadays, they're pretty big. You know, small homes nowadays are, you know, 1,600 square feet. That's considered a small home. Anything under 2,000 square feet is considered small. And I remember when I was young, if you had a 2,000 square foot house, man, you had a palace, you know? And if you had a $250,000 house, you were in the big league. That was $250,000, man. That's huge. And nowadays, with the market, particularly in Texas, you know, $250,000 can be a starter home. Crazy how things change, you know. So what size house do you need? Do you have children? You know, do you plan on having guests? Are you a person that likes to entertain a lot? You might need a guest bedroom. Do you need a home office? Right now with COVID, a lot of us are working from home, and maybe a home office is a consideration where it wasn't before. You know, maybe now it is. You know, we're facing a new reality. Many of us may be working from home in the future, even when COVID lifts. So that's all things to consider. How many bathrooms are you going to need? you know? Do you need a master bath that has dual sinks because you don't want to get in your wife's way when she's putting her makeup on in the morning? She needs her own space, you know, those kinds of things. And what about the yard, you know? Are you an outdoor guy or are you not an outdoor guy? I know I have friends that the last thing they want to do on their weekend is mow their grass. They don't want a big yard. And then, you know, if you're like me, I enjoy it. So, you know, I don't mind a little bigger yard, take the time to mow and, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, what size yard do you need? Do you need room for, you know, gosh, a shed? You know, maybe you don't. Maybe your garage will suffice. But again, things have changed. We have a lot more stuff nowadays. Homeowners have full garages and storage spaces too that they rent because we have so much stuff. So maybe a shed is something you need to plan for. All right. So when we're talking about picking the ideal home, choosing the ideal home, there are the obvious things: how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms, how many square feet in the house, how big is the yard? You know, am I going to have a patio? Does it need to have a pool? Do I need a 3-car garage, 2-car garage? Do I not need a garage at all? All of those are factors, right? But also there's some things that are really important that you need to consider besides all of that. So let's just talk about the house's exterior first, okay? What about the condition of the roof? When was the last time that it was shingled? If it's got metal roofing, what's the shape of the metal roof? Is it got fresh paint on it? Is the paint peeling? Is there rust? Are the edges of the shingles curling a little bit? You know, there's, again, these are things that a good home inspector would tell you how much life he thinks is left in the roof, but you want to inspect that because it's not cheap to repair a roof. You're $7,000, $8,000, all the way up to $15,000 for a new roof. That's a lot of money. What about the foundation? Well, in Texas, you got the black soil that you got to worry about. Not in every part of Texas, but in our part of Texas, there's the black soil, that expansive soil that lifts and contracts with temperature and moisture content. And it literally can lift an entire house, one side of the house, and twist that house so that that house ages in a period of 6 months to a year, what might take 25 years in another state without such expansive soil. We owned one house. I was freshly moved to Texas, and I had no idea about keeping your foundation watered, about making sure it doesn't get too dry around the house. I had no idea. And in the space of 6 months, a 1/4-inch crack opened up in the brick when there was no crack before. And it was all due to the expansive soil. So you want to look for those kinds of things. You know, there's a foundation and the evidence of that. You know, when you walk into the house, you're looking at the walls and the drywall. Are there rips and tears and cracks above doors and above windows at the corners and the seams of the drywall? You want to be looking at that kind of thing to see if there's any kind of issues that might speak to something much larger, much more expensive. You know, what about the type of maintenance on the exterior? Is it a painted house? Is it siding? Is it brick? You know, what kind of maintenance is required? And when was the last time it was painted? And what kind of exterior do you want on your house? You know, do you want a maintenance-free house? Those are things to consider. And what about the interior? Well, we're going to be looking at bedrooms, bathrooms, living areas, heating and cooling systems. What's the age on those? We bought our first house here in Texas. I'm telling you all these stories. We bought our first house here in Texas. And because I didn't at the time look at the age of the AC units, and there were 2 of them, my electric bill, and it was mostly due to these units, my electric bill was $575 in the month of June, just my electric bill. So, you know, had to update those, and that's pretty substantial to do so. And again, garage space, those are all things that are really, really important when you're considering the right house for your family and what fits into your budget, all right? So with that, the most important room probably in any house has got to be the kitchen. I mean, that's the center, right? That's the family hub. Everybody goes to the refrigerator. Everybody's going to the table. Mom or dad's cooking dinner. It's where we gather to eat and to fellowship and to, so much happens there. And it's also the most expensive room in the entire house. So when was it updated last? What shape are the cabinets in? What shape are the hinges in? Are the doors flopping around, or are they secured firmly? The hardware, has it been updated? The sink, has it been updated? If there's tile, is it from 1983 or is it something newly updated? Those are all really important things, and you definitely want to look at the kitchen because it's very expensive to update a kitchen. So again, if someone has done that for you, it makes the house worth that much more. The other thing, ladies and men as well, to consider is how much storage does the house offer? Seriously. We bought one house in Michigan that had fabulous storage. The guy that built this house, every nook and cranny that he could put a closet or some little storage space he did, and it was fabulous. It was awesome. And then we bought another house here in Texas that didn't have hardly any storage, and we really regretted not having it. So very important to consider. Next screen, please. All right, so you've determined budget, you've determined area, you've determined, kind of what you're looking for, what you need square footage wise, what you want. Now it's time to find someone to help you get there, and someone who has access to the MLS and all the listings. So now we want to talk about finding the right real estate agent, all right? This is an exciting journey, and a good real estate agent who knows all the ins and the outs of the market can make the process even better for you and more seamless. And they can make good recommendations. So there are many agencies out there, and it might be a little difficult. And again, another piece that may potentially be overwhelming when you consider, who do I pick? Because they all smile when you first meet them. They all seem pretty warm and friendly. How do you get through that to really know if they're going to be a great agent or not? Well, here's some things that might help you in determining that, all right? So first thing is choose the person, not just the experience, all right? So what we mean by that is, how do you feel when you meet the individual? And here's what we're all afraid to do. We're all afraid to just tell somebody no. Or, thank you for your time. We're going to keep searching. It's difficult to do because we feel like we're personally affronting them or offending them in some way. But the reality is not all personalities fit and meld with ours. We may be looking for someone who's very soft-spoken, very laid back. That's the personality we want to work with, but highly knowledgeable. Then again, we may like somebody who is very robust, very exciting, very motivated. That may be something that appeals to us. So really pick the individual, not just the experience. So when we say the experience, we're talking about literally, believe it or not, an agent might have 20 years experience as a realtor, but their personality is not a fit at all with you. Even though they've got 20 years, and you may find someone who's only been in the industry 3 years, that it's a perfect fit for you. Okay, so keep that in mind. Chemistry is really important when we talk about this. Do you connect with them? Do you feel like they're connecting with you in that little bit when you're kind of interviewing them? The other thing that you might consider when thinking about getting an agent is get referrals from other homeowners. If you can get a good word of mouth, from a neighbor or a friend or a family member. Yeah, we worked with John. John was fantastic. He took care of us. He was available when we had questions. That's all great. Every agent's available when it's time to sign the contract, but it seems not so much when you have questions after the fact. So, are they available after the fact? Are they going to be ready to receive your phone calls when you want to get a hold of them? So when you're looking at them and you're talking to them, you want to look for drive, conviction, honesty, trustworthiness. Those are important traits. Ask about their sales history. You know, how many homes have they sold? I certainly believe that everybody needs a fair shake, and an agent may do a great job for you if they've not sold a single home. But at the same time, you know, you have to be careful because there's a lot of people that enter that field and they don't last. So, you know, you don't necessarily want them to get their education on you. So ask about their sales history. Look for someone who listens well, communicates well. I think those are kind of obvious things to look for, okay? All right. The other thing that we want to talk about is finding the right mortgage lender. If we can go ahead and get the next screen, Washima. So you're looking for the right real estate agent, the right property, the right neighborhood, the right home. Now we need the right mortgage lender. Okay. The last thing that you need in this entire process is certainly you don't need a high pressure situation. There's enough pressure dealing with this that you don't need pressure coming from your mortgage lender or from your realtor for that matter. So you want to find the right mortgage lender. And there's a few things I think that are important when you consider this. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's a transaction, a financial transaction. So with like any financial transaction, there are the numbers to consider, and the numbers are important. They're not the only thing to consider, but they're very important. So do they offer competitive interest rates, and are their fees competitive? You have to be careful with this, ladies and gentlemen, because sometimes they'll give you something on the front end and take it away on the back end. And this is what I mean by that. They may cut everybody's interest rate, and you get an 1/8 to 1/4% savings compared to everybody else. And that's good if you can. But then if you're not careful and you don't look at their fees, you find out, oh, wow, they're charging more on their fees than everybody else, or more than the average. So they're giving it to you on the rate because that looks flashy and that's great. Oh, I got a 2.625, but you're paying, you know, 1.5% origination fee on the back end. Okay, so really be careful of that. Look at the fee structure, compare that. Look at the interest rates, compare that. When you're dealing with a lender, you know, a lot of lenders will rate match, and so, you know, but it's got to be a legitimate offer. You know, do you qualify for that offer? Do you have it in writing? Well, then present it and see if they'll rate match. The other thing you want to look for in the right mortgage lender is great communication and responsiveness. Just like the realtor who's very eager to get you to sign the contract to work exclusively with them. And then if you're not careful, all of a sudden, you know, they're not answering your text messages or your phone calls. You can't get a hold of them unless they need something. The same thing can be said of mortgage loan officers. So you want someone who is willing to not only walk you through the application process and originating the loan application, but you want them to be available when you need them and you have additional questions. So ask them about that, interview them. How are you, if you're talking to a mortgage loan officer, how good are you at responding to phone calls? I'm sure you're busy like everybody else right now. So what can I expect turnaround time wise if I need to get a hold of you? Will you call me the same day? Will you call me the next day? Do I have to wait 2 days, 3 days, 4 hours? What is it, you know? And then the other thing I would say is make sure they have a good reputation. You know, any industry is subject to someone setting up shop, taking advantage of a bunch of people, then closing shop or filing bankruptcy and absconding with the profits and unfortunately leaving a mess in their wake. So do they have a good reputation? Have they been in business for a while? You know, what are the reviews? Are they rated by the Business Bureau? You know, what are people saying about them really is what it amounts to. And if people are saying really good things and they're returning to that same place, you probably have a good find when it comes to a good company. All right. Well, Shima, if we can go to the next screen. All right. So let's talk about mortgage programs. And there's a bunch of them out there. Excuse me. We want to talk about conventional mortgages, FHAs, USDAs, construction loans, VA, DPA programs. Did I just thoroughly confuse you? All right. Don't be surprised if you are, because there are a lot of programs out there. And depending on what you're looking for, there is a program that will fit you. Not every lender offers all programs. There are a few lenders out there that offer all programs, but some specialize in particular areas. I'm employed and counted a privilege to work for Texas Trust Credit Union. We do conventional mortgages. We don't do FHA, USDA. We don't do construction, new construction or VA programs, but we're really good at conventional mortgages. We do cash out refis, rate term refis and purchases, and we do home improvement loans. And we're really good at that. But that's our lane. We understand that's our lane and that's what we operate in. But we also know that people are not limited to just those programs, right? So, you know, certainly when you talk about programs, there's a lot to consider when you know, are looking at these programs. I don't have time today to go into great detail on each one of these, but each is unique, and I would encourage you to look more deeply into these programs. A conventional mortgage is just that. You have a certain amount of money down and you want to purchase, or you're going to do a refinance, or you're going to do a cash out. And you just come in and you have the criteria to qualify for this loan, and you know, and we can do all the way up to 97% financing on a conventional mortgage. You're probably going to get some of your best treatment on rates in a conventional mortgage for sure. All right. So if you've got decent credit, and there are conventional mortgage programs out there, and even with Texas Trust, that, you know, all the way down to a 620 credit score, and even at times lower than that, depending on what the issues are. So don't get discouraged, you know, if you don't have that perfect credit score. Okay, there's a lot of programs. You can probably find something that'll get you financed. But FHA offers, that's a government-backed program that offers homeowners with some challenging situations and circumstances the ability to go ahead and get a government-backed mortgage. And there's some great details with that. Again, I don't have time today to go into it. Texas Trust doesn't offer an FHA program, but they are out there, and they're good, solid programs. If you're an individual, for example, that has filed for bankruptcy, FHA will allow you right around 3.5 years or so after the bankruptcy is discharged to apply for a mortgage loan. That's fantastic. You can't do that with a conventional mortgage. You know, if you have a repossession. So, and you know, we all have circumstances and stories and situations where nobody intended to be in that situation. Nobody set up, you know, determined that, you know, my plan is to file bankruptcy or to have a foreclosure. But you know what? Life happens, events happen, unforeseen things happen. And sometimes you can find yourself in a situation that you never thought you'd be in, and things like that happen. Well, thank God there's programs out there that will help folks that have been in those kinds of extenuating circumstances. FHA is one of those programs. You are limited to how much a household can make to qualify for some of these programs. So you just, again, you want to go in and do your research on these programs to determine whether or not it's the right program for you. What about if you're buying in a rural area? If you're outside of city limits, you can actually qualify for a USDA program for rural property. This is a government-backed loan to incentivize people to buy in more rural areas, and they'll finance up to 100%. Now, again, that doesn't include closing costs, but you don't have to have a down payment on the property. That's pretty neat. That might fit your situation. And then there's construction loans. You want to go buy a new house. There's construction loans. The VA, if you're military, and those of you that are out there that are military or were military, we appreciate your service very much. And thank you for the sacrifice and the time that you put in. But there's the Veterans Administration Program. That's a wonderful program. Again, another program where there's 100% financing. There's no private mortgage insurance required on this. You get a great rate. I mean, it's really ideal for a lot of folks that have military service. And then finally, I'm going to say a quick word about DPA programs, and that's down payment assistance programs. Yes, there is available help out there as long as you qualify for these programs. Again, there's limitations. You can only make so much and you have to qualify, but there's down payment assistance programs out there for those of you that may struggle getting enough money to put down on a house to be a homeowner. So wonderful programs. Again, it's just really where you're at to determine which program is right for you. All right. All right, next screen, please. Thank you. All right. So now we've talked about all this and it's time to start shopping, right? So what do we do when we start shopping? Well, we got to make an offer, right? You find the home, you got the realtor, you got the mortgage lender down, so you got a pre-approval, and it's time to go out and start shopping. Please be aware that in the Texas market right now, you might have to make multiple offers. It's just the reality of a very active market. And so, you know, you might have your heart set. I would caution to be careful not to get too set on one particular property in a market like we're experiencing, because someone may outbid you. The property may go to bidding. It goes to the highest bidder. There may be multiple offers on the same day. So you just have to be aware of that. But you start shopping, and that's the exciting part of this. And back up your offer with a contract if you're serious. Remember, in today's market, it's a seller's market. You want to make your offer a serious offer, all right? If you want that place, you better make it a serious offer. Back it up with a contract and a deposit, okay? That's all I'm going to say about that, and we're going to move on because I'm running out of time. But you want to make sure that you make a very serious offer. Okay, so your offer's accepted, now what? Well, here's what's important. So once it's accepted, you want to let your mortgage loan officer know it's accepted so that you can begin the process of getting fully approved on your loan. So you want to, and this is where a realtor will help you as well. Talk to your mortgage loan officer, say, hey, I've got an offer that's approved, that's been accepted, and I need to go ahead and get fully qualified. What do you need from me? The mortgage loan officer will then tell you that they're going to need bank statements, tax returns, W-2s, your typical package, financial package you're going to have to send in so that they can get you fully underwritten and fully approved. Your realtor is going to obviously need to know that so that they can finish executing everything that needs to be executed for this house to transition. And then the clock starts ticking for days to close. And you can usually expect anywhere from 30 to 45 days to closing on a conventional mortgage. If it's an FHA, a USDA, government-backed loan, it can be much longer. It can be 60 days or even more to close, depending on how busy and backed up they are. So you just have to be aware of that. All right. So now that you got fully approved, and they've ordered the survey, you've got a home inspection. Don't forget that home inspection. Now's the time to order it. You get access to the property to do a final walkthrough before closing. Highly recommend that. Make sure nothing's changed. The pipe hasn't broken. The air conditioner didn't quit in between. Everything's working. Toilets are still flushing. Everything's still good. And then at that point, you want to go to closing and sign all the paperwork that needs to be signed. If you need to hire a moving company, do so, but make plans on now moving, and trust me, get more help than what you think you're going to need. Moving is a lot of work. So I'm sure you've done it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. Well, Shima, how are we doing on time?
You're good. You're good to continue.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. All right, a few tips on those of you that have to sell a home before you purchase a home. Again, same thing when it comes to a realtor. So all the tips that I gave about finding a realtor are true here as well. The difference is you're going to be finding a realtor to help you sell. And that same realtor, no doubt, would love to be your realtor to help you buy as well. So find a good one and they can help you through both of those transactions. They'll help you determine the best price for your home. Again, it's a lot of things are considered: the school district, the area, the crime rate, the accessibility to interstate travel, jobs in the area. There's a lot of factors, along with the square footage of your home and the size of your yard. All of that, an experienced realtor will help you find a good competitive price for your home. But the other things that you need to consider are the curb appeal of your home. If the last time your house was painted was 1985, it might be time to put a little lipstick on the home, to dress it up and to make it, attractive, so that when people walk up, they can feel and sense themselves living there. I can see myself living here, walking up, it just looks great. So landscaping, paint, what does the driveway look like? What does the interior look like? Remember we talked about the kitchen. Has the kitchen been updated? And you might be in a position to where, you can't afford to make all those updates. That's just something you have to decide, and your price will have to ultimately reflect, how modernized and updated your house is. But certainly I'm going to tell you, when someone drives up to a house, their first impression is usually it goes a long way down towards whether or not they're going to spend much time on your property at all. Okay. You have to be, at that point, flexible for showings. Obviously people work jobs, so that means you need to be open to evening showings, weekend showings if you're looking to sell your house. Again, work very closely with your agent, and they'll help you out a lot with that in regards to selling a house. Next screen, please. All right, so there are a couple of other types of loans that we haven't really talked about, and I'm just going to say a couple of quick things about them. We talk about refinancing your current loan. Maybe you're not going to sell. Maybe you're not buying. You're in a house and this is your forever house, or this is your for right now house. Rates right now are at historic lows. And I will tell you, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the future holds for sure. But, the chance that rates are going to stay this low forever is not likely. So at some point in the future, I'm 100% right on this. At some point in the future, they're going to go up. Just don't know when that is. And so right now they're at historic lows. If you haven't refinanced your home, you're still paying 4%, 5%, high threes. You might consider refinancing your home. You can change the term when you refinance. Maybe you started out with a 30-year, but you can now afford a 15-year payment, and you're going to save tens of thousands of dollars on interest by doing that. You're going to save thousands of dollars in interest just getting a lower rate. So ask your mortgage loan officer to run the numbers for you. How much would you save if you changed your loan from a 15 or 30-year to a 15-year, or from a 20-year to a 15-year, or whatever, maybe it's a 30 to a 25 or a 20, whatever it is. And if you got this new rate, how much would you save versus how much it costs you to do the loan itself? And, it may be very well worth your time and energy to do that. A home equity loan. Hey, maybe this is your forever house, and you know what, that kitchen or that bathroom does need updating. It needs renovating. So you've got equity in your house, you've been in it for a while, and you can come to a financial institution and say, hey, what I would like to do is I need $20,000, or I need $25,000, or I need $10,000 to work on my house. And so they can put you through a program and refinance your note. Right now, again, the rates are low, and give you some money at the end of the transaction to update that kitchen, or to update that bathroom, or to add that pool, or an extra bedroom, or whatever it might be that you're looking to do. Okay. And the other thing, you can do that with a home equity loan or a home improvement loan. A home improvement loan for Texas Trust, you know, if you've got a project that's $35,000 or less, hey, a home improvement loan might be the very thing that you need. It's a fantastic program, and it works out really, really well. It's a very quick process, fast to close, not a lot of criteria, you know, and it can get you there rather quickly. So a home improvement loan might be the thing for you, again, to do some of those home projects or whatever it is that you have on your agenda. Okay. Next screen, please. Okay.
All right.
I think that I have covered a lot of ground, and you know, I can't believe that much time, Washima, has gone by, because I feel like I rushed through absolutely everything and left so much information on the table. But we do have only a limited amount of time, and hopefully our listeners got something useful out of what was said in this entire process.
Awesome. I agree. I wish we had more time, and I'm sure everyone appreciates your wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. So we don't have a lot of time, but I do see that we have 2 questions, and I'll go ahead and ask you those 2 that we have. One viewer asked, he wants to purchase a home, but he is also looking to purchase a car. What is a good time to make a large purchase before starting the home buying process?
Yeah, well, you got to remember that lending is always from a historical perspective. Lenders always look in the rearview mirror. So we're looking in the past, all right, for the most part, and that is for your tax returns. What do the last 2 tax returns look like? What did your last 2 months of bank statements look like? It's always looking in the past to predict what the future is going to look like. So keep that in mind first and foremost, okay? With any kind of purchase, with any kind of, you know, if you know, for example, and I'm going to get to his question, it's a great question, but if you know, for example, you're going to be sitting down with a lender in the next couple of years, you know, you may want to do your tax returns so that you're showing the maximum amount of income rather than writing off a bunch. If you have a bunch of options for writing it off, simply because you got to show income, right? So keep that in mind. Ask yourself the question, am I going to be sitting down with the lender the next 2 years? Now, what's important is when it comes to making large purchases, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot before you start the mortgage process, because they're going to be doing debt to income ratio. You know, if you're replacing a car note with a similar car note, if you know how to figure your own debt to income ratio and you're well within, you know, 45% or less, you know, you're way under that, and you know that the new house you're going to be looking for is less than that, you could purchase that car before you start the mortgage process. But once you start the mortgage process, don't do any of that. Don't touch anything. Don't get a credit card. Don't have your credit pulled. Don't sign for any notes. Don't co-sign for anything. Don't do anything until that transaction is complete. Once it's complete and you have closed, go ahead and you can get your car, or you can do whatever you want. But all of that, any transaction at all, any encumbrance, any further debt, any credit pull could adversely affect you qualifying for that mortgage. So I guess the question is, you either do it before, all right, or wait until you're done, but do not do it at all. Don't touch it once, don't start it once the mortgage process has started, okay? Because again, it's going to affect all those ratios. And again, I'm only saying, I'm giving a caveat. If you do it before, you better be able to figure out what your debt to income ratio is so you don't put yourself in a bad situation. It would be a shame to go buy, for example, that nice new truck, that nice new car that you can afford, no problem, all right, with your current setting. But you know what? You had your eyes set on a little nicer house, but now because of that new truck or that new car, you can't afford that nice new house. Okay. So, and again, you know, a lender can help you work through all that. I think that was a great question from one of our listeners.
Fantastic. We have one more question from the same listener, and I feel like I know your answer to this one, but do you predict that we will move into a buyer's market in the next few years?
Wow. You know, I work with a lot of property investors because I do commercial lending as well. And I know that there are some property investors that are liquidating some of their holdings, some of their property holdings, positioning themselves so that they have good liquidity, or in other words, they have a lot of cash on hand for when the market does reverse. At some point it will. That's real estate for you. It always happens. At some point it will. Will it happen within the next couple of years? You know, I wish I had that crystal ball, you know, because if I knew that, I would sure be positioning myself to take advantage of it. All I can tell you is that it's inevitable. I just don't know when. So right now, you know, I think there's not enough indicators right now to say that it's on the horizon for sure. It's still very strong, very robust. There's still more demand for the most part than there is inventory. Buying flip properties and investment properties, it's very competitive. Buyers are finding it difficult to find those good deals. It's highly competitive out there. So, you know, all I can tell you is what some of them are doing. Some of them are liquidating what they have to position themselves to be able to snatch up properties when that happens, but they fully know they might be sitting on that money for a couple of years. I'm sorry, that's kind of a vague answer, but there's just there's no way to really give an answer on that. You know, what my gut is, yeah, sometime in the next 5 years, it'll reverse some for sure. But beyond that, I don't know. That's about as specific as I can get.
Yeah, well, thank you for being honest, and that bit of insight definitely helps us. Well, this concludes our Q&A session. If you would like to learn more, become a member, or talk to us directly, please feel free to contact us using the information on the screen. We also have some links posted in the comments for if you would like to schedule an appointment or have one of us give you a call. We also went ahead and posted the link and phone number for ballots if you would like to get a hold of them. Well, thank you again, Scott and Linda, for all of this information. I'm sure our viewers are very, very, very appreciative, and thank you so much for your time. So mark your calendars, everyone. Our next Facebook Live webinar will be on Tuesday, April 13th at noon. You will get some tips on budgeting and how to best utilize your savings and checking accounts.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you all so much for tuning in to today's webinar. And remember, Texas Trust Credit Union is here with you every step of the way for all your financial needs. See you next time.